Hello, everybody. This is Parrish Alford with the Daily Journal, joined by John Davis and Brandon Speck. We are talking recruiting for the next half hour. Lots to talk about today, getting closer to signing day. JD, we're out of the dead period right now. Is that right?
That's correct. Hold on, I was retweeting. Yes, we are out of the dead period. It ended. It stopped at midnight. I was actually up at midnight doing some stuff, and Keith Niebuhr from 24/7 Sports said it's game on or something like that, and it literally came across at midnight. So it ended at midnight. Of course, you can't see prospects realistically at midnight, but you can see them at 7 in the morning. And former Ole Miss coach Ed Orgeron was joined by Kevin Steele, or was scheduled. Let me just put it that way, since I wasn't there. He was scheduled to be at a kid's school in Alabama at 7 in the morning. So bright and early, all these coaches were out, popping off and going off to see the kids at school.
Brandon, looks like you were able to join us. I know you were having some technical difficulties there a little bit, but good to see you on here. We had a kid from Ripley make a commitment to Mississippi State this week. Want to talk about him in just a moment, but lots to talk about. And JD, let's just start with that kid in Alabama. He's got an interesting story, and right now on the blog at InsideOleMissSports.com, a piece that you put up last night is really rocking and rolling and getting a lot of traffic. Tell us about him.
Well, he's from Nigeria. His name is Prince Tega Bonogo Jr.
Is he a real prince?
Say that again?
Is he a real prince? Is he royalty?
I didn't get that particular aspect in the conversation. I know that he lives with a home family who is an assistant coach at the academy there, and he came to America from Nigeria in August. He was a basketball first player, is playing basketball now currently, but basketball was his sport. He is almost 6'8", about 250 pounds, and his coach told me last night that they were, the first time he came on campus, they were doing some conditioning, in the summertime, and the kids were running 40s, and he has a size 17 cleat. They didn't have that. They didn't have that in stock, so he gets on his Jordan high tops and runs a 4.6 140, and he was like, man, the coach thought he actually was faster. He puts another one of his kids 5 yards ahead of him, and Prince, or Tega, they call him Tega, ran after him. He blew the whistle. They both took off running. One kid's 5 yards ahead. Tega caught him 35-yard line. So he doesn't know exactly how fast he is, but he knows he's fast because the kid that he had running ahead of him ran a 4.4 and has offers as well.
All right, the real interesting part.
He doesn't know who Nick Saban is. He doesn't even know where the end zone was.
He's in Alabama. He doesn't know who Nick Saban is. That is.
He just got to Alabama. He doesn't know Alabama from Florida, from California. Now, he likes Alabama. He likes the South. Apparently, he's come to love his time there, and his coach said that he really thinks the schools that he's going to be picking are going to be within about 3 to 5 hours of Montgomery. The central Alabama area, near school, near where he's gotten accustomed to living these last 4 months.
Well, I think one of the real interesting storylines with this guy is that we thought he was going to be class of 16, and now he's 15, right?
Right. Yeah. Apparently, based on what Coach said, that they went back and principal, guidance counselor went back, got the Nigerian transcripts and what he had already accomplished, and got it all situated, got it all worked out to realize that he could graduate in May, and got reclassified from 16 to 15, and it happened Monday. And as soon as that happened, the phones started ringing left and right. I mean, Notre Dame, Tennessee was already kind of had contact with him. Ole Miss, Mississippi State. He said really outside of Florida State and Alabama, everybody else in the country has been calling or trying to figure out how we get involved with this.
So what position does he project in college?
Defensive end. He feels like defensive end because he has to. He's so raw. He said, even as I'm sure you both read the story. But the quote is he's as green as grass as far as playing football. In his opinion, Tiga would be better suited to play defense as opposed to offense. He'd have to learn more. He has to, do all that kind of stuff. He played tight end. He caught 5 touchdown passes, but when one of the first drills, he caught a pass and he was supposed to go in the end zone. The secondary coach told him, Tiga, go into the end zone. He goes, Coach, where's the end zone? So, I mean, the whole point is, and I think it's a great point. Defense is a lot probably easier for transition for him. I don't think there's any doubt he's going to have to redshirt, but I think the potential, the sky is literally the limit with this guy. And what you could do with some good coaching, what you could do with him in general, you can't teach 6'8". You can't teach 4'6" at 250 pounds. So I just think that the potential is there for him to be a really good player. Maybe not in 2015. But down the road.
Brandon, I've covered some offenses during my time in Mississippi that I would question whether they knew where the end zone was. Tell me about the Story kid at Ripley, the offensive lineman. First name escapes me right now. He committed to state this week. What kind of player did the Bulldogs get?
Michael Story's a good one. He's kind of one of those guys that Mullen and those guys go after that nobody's really chasing, and they kind of seem to be the first on some of those guys. He's one of them. Early enrollee, he's 6'4", about 290, 295. So, I talked with his coach, Chad Cook, who's familiar to Ole Miss folks, that he told me about 2 months ago he thinks he's going to the SEC, and he was right. I mean, he's raved about it. He thinks he's got all the tools to play SEC football, and he thinks in a year or two this guy's going to be a star.
Well, listen, I identified him as going to the SEC. Why was he kind of a late bloomer, I guess, and getting some interest?
I don't know, but he's one of those guys that was kind of getting a couple of, all the JUCOs were on him and getting a couple lower-level offers and just kind of riding low. I think he developed a little late and just kind of got good. I mean, he's been good, but I think he kind of started getting the attention this year. I mean, he's such a big kid. I think he graded out at 90% all the way across, and he's got good feet from what I'm told, and is just a real big, strong guy. So I think he's just kind of a late bloomer as far as talent-wise. That's why it took him so long to get on board.
Did we determine the relationship to Kedrick Story? If he's in Ripley, there's got to be one somewhere.
They spell their names differently, so Kedrick is not related to him.
Wait, okay. And it's an E, right? Kedrick, the difference is the E. That's it, right?
Difference is the E, correct, yes.
All right. Now, you said Chad Cook is his coach. How is he ending up at Mississippi State?
Good question. I think just because Ole Miss didn't really come after him.
That would answer that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, sign him if you got him.
All right.
And Brandon, I know you know more about him than I do, but I kind of have gathered that the late bloomer is absolutely right, but maybe didn't go to as many camps or didn't do as well, and sometimes that hurts you as well when you don't go to a camp and or don't perform as well at a camp from a recruiting standpoint. That's one of those situations where sometimes you're going to have to go into your senior year and have a really good senior year to get a late offer like this. But I've gathered from the couple people I've talked to about him, in doing research, is that he is long term going to be a pretty good player. The feeling is a year under a red shirt and learning the system would do him well, but also probably be very beneficial to the entire Mississippi State program. And that's kind of what they've done. We've talked about that a couple times on the show. Their style has been to redshirt kids. I think they do a great job with that, and I think as a result, more often than not, they have a lot more fifth-year kids than most schools, and I think that benefits them. I think it really benefited them this year.
Yeah, I mean, he could have probably gone JUCO and bulked up there, but he's going to go to state and bulk up while he's watching SEC football up close. So, but yeah, he's a guy that in a couple of years they really think is going to be a starter and a star for them. It wouldn't be the first time Mullen's done that.
Well, you can go ahead and get on these rosters and bulk up and get in the program. A lot of offensive lines are really born that way, man. You get those guys in early and get them in the strength and conditioning programs on campus, and down the road you're looking at an offensive line with a fourth-year junior and a fifth-year senior and guys like that. Those are the lines that are really productive. Let's stay on Mississippi State recruiting a little bit. Dak Prescott's coming back. Both of you feel this one. JD, let's start with you. How does that impact recruiting? I mean, they're losing a lot. They've got some guys who aren't coming back with Josh Robinson and Benardrick McKinney, Dak Prescott is coming back. What impact does that have on recruiting?
I think it's a best case scenario for them. The final push. I mean, could you imagine them being without? All right, you already lost Robinson, like you said. You already lost McKinney. You already knew you had a big senior class to fill. Okay. Could you imagine if you have to replace the guy that was at the first 10 weeks of the season being talked about to win the Heisman? And I say that to say this. It's going to probably keep anybody that may be coming there to play with him for 1 year the potential of getting looked at or the ball thrown to him, knowing that you've got a quarterback that can get it to you there, but also from the fact that you can finish up with potential skill player guys. Now, I think their class is pretty set at the end of the day, but I think it keeps it together, and I think it helps in case you have that situation arise from a finishing out standpoint. And both sides of the ball. I mean, I think it's offense and defensive guys, but I cannot believe that it's anything but a positive for Mississippi State in this equation to have Dak Prescott be part of the team next year, especially when it comes to the next thing that you can deal with, which is recruiting.
Brandon, what do you think about Dak coming back?
I totally agree, and I think it's imperative because, some of these way too early polls you're seeing come out, they're not even ranked in some of these. So, I mean, I like J.D. Sell kind of echo that. You're losing a lot already, and if you lose him, I mean, he's the diamond piece. So if he goes, even if he went and other people stayed, it's a big loss. But the losses they've incurred so far and kind of the lack of hype they're getting, I mean, it's early, grant you, but, yeah, losing him, I think that could have cost them some recruits.
Yeah, you know what? It's the South, man, and you can find guys who can run the football and catch the football. When you have a quarterback who is in sync with you as a coach and knows what you want to do, that's big. Those guys aren't always so easy to find, those elite quarterbacks. When you find that guy, and look, Dak Prescott, we've seen him. He needs to improve in the passing game. He needs to take that step, and maybe he'll be a better pro prospect at the end of next season. But he needs to improve in some areas of his game. But such a great athlete and really ingrained in that system now and knows what Dan Mullen wants him to do and how to operate. I think they can find the pieces to put around him. Every player might not be elite, but like I said, you can find guys that can run and catch. I think you can do that. So as far as, I've seen some of these way too early polls, and I'm really surprised that State's not mentioned in there somewhere, just out of respect for what they accomplished this year, because usually that's what those polls are. Those early polls, a lot of it's based on what you accomplished the year before. But anyway, shifting gears a little bit, hey, a guy we've talked about on here before, Leo Lewis out of Brookhaven. There was a story on ESPN this week that they kind of predicted that he would flip to Mississippi State. He's currently an Ole Miss commit. Are you guys hearing anything on that? JD, let's start with you.
I mean, again, I go back to what we've talked about a couple times on the show, and that is the following. If there's going to be a flip, it's going to be to Mississippi State because of his past. I'm trying to find the right word. And the best one is connection. That Ole Miss fought really hard to get him up to campus and really get him involved with Ole Miss and kind of thinking away from Mississippi State. And I think once that happened, I think that's why he committed. But I think with Tom Allen being gone, I don't think that's overcomable. But I mean, with him being gone and his background, the people he lives around, and just the fact that Mississippi State's obviously still pushing, I think if he goes somewhere, it's going to be to State. And I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I really believe that it's a possibility. Now, he committed back in September, early September. It's only recently, I say recently, the last 6-7 weeks that it's come back up to where he potentially could go somewhere or not go to Ole Miss. I think you got to keep him at the end of the day. I think you got to find a way to keep Leo Lewis as part of this class, because if you don't, right now defensive line would probably be the biggest need, if you will, to finish up. If you lose Leo Lewis, linebacker is definitely at the top then, because he's really kind of keeping an average or pretty good linebacking class. They would like to have one more, and obviously if they had Davon Durant back in December, that would have been great. But you lose Leo Lewis, you go from being okay, pretty good, to not as good, really, really, really quick. So you got to get Leo Lewis. You got to keep him. And again, I think if he flips, it's going to be to State. Now, do I believe it'll happen before signing day? No, I think it'll probably happen within the last day or two before signing day, if it happens at all.
When did C.J. Johnson flip from State to Ole Miss? Brandon, do you remember that? The days are running together. I was trying to think how close to signing day that was.
Man, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning.
JD, you got a read on that, man? When did C.J. Johnson flip?
I remember talking to C.J. back. I actually caught him in a deer stand the first time I ever talked to him when I started to hear that he was going to flip. He spoke very quiet on a whisper to me that day, and that was about a week and a half, 2 weeks before the season. And so right around this time, mid-January, couple 3 weeks before before signing day really came, so like I said, right around this time. I mean, and it happens. This is when the dead period ends and things start to reinvigorate and re-lock in and all that kind of good stuff, and coaches go back out and see kids, and Orgeron coming back into the mix, or a new staff member at a new place coming back into the mix. Things change. I mean, this is when you're going to start to see a lot of the rumors, a lot of the flips, a lot of the go back and forth. They're going to get on a campus visit and go, man, this place is better than I thought. And yeah, I was LSU for 6 months, but I'm suddenly Ole Miss. This is when it's going to happen. And you just kind of have to, if you're a coach and you've got that kid, you got to be in protect mode. If you're wanting to get that kid, you're in the hunt mode. So it just, it's a movable force meets overcomable force and a movable object. Who wins? I don't know.
Well, the flips like that are few and far between, but they do occur, and when they occur, they create a lot of drama because, like you said, you've been with one school all this time, and all of a sudden you're going to go another direction. While they are few and far between, when you look at the numbers and you look at the positions of need, as with Ole Miss, losing one guy like that of that magnitude really affects this class. They need help at linebacker. They need numbers. They need quality. Leo Lewis could bring that. So, they're going to work to keep him and, be a better class if they can.
Well, Leo Lewis. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Brandon. You go ahead.
I like the general rule of thumb that it's it's one flip and done. I think you commit to two schools, and the last one you commit to is probably it. I don't think he flips. I mean, I think he's still taking his visits to these two schools in Alabama and trying to get a feel for it. I think the drama's going to build, obviously, like we're talking about. I don't think he flips.
Well, now, Brandon, you will remember this as well. He was Alabama, and we were over in Hoover, and the talk back then was that he may flip from Bama to State.
Everybody was, right.
Right, and he committed to Alabama, and I want to say it was like March, early April, but it just didn't feel right. It felt like State was going to be more involved. And I think when he didn't pull the trigger that night at Big Dog Camp, and it kind of went from summer into the early fall, and it became Ole Miss, like you said, do you flip from Alabama to Ole Miss back to State? Probably not. I think that's a great point on your part. But then again, I will say this too. How true was he with Bama? Did he just say, I'm going to Bama, and never really put his heart into it? That's the other thing I don't know, because I've never asked him that one thing, and because I'm not him, I don't know how sincere he really was with Bama. It's cool to say I'm going to Alabama, especially if you've got a legitimate, committable offer. But it's another to really be all the way with it, and that's the part I don't know, and that's the part that may come into play here, because if he was really, truly committed to Alabama, I'm with you, Brandon. I don't know if he flips twice.
Go ahead, Brandon. Finish up.
No, JD kind of said this, but I think with Alabama, it's easy to say you're going because you know what Alabama is. You don't have to visit Alabama. If you live in Wisconsin, you don't have to visit Alabama to know what Alabama is. For Ole Miss and State, I think they're still in that region in the SEC that you have to visit. I think a commitment to State or Ole Miss is way more true, like you said, than Alabama, because you could be from wherever and know you want to go to Alabama. To know you want to go to Ole Miss or State, I think you have to come down here and look at them.
Well, talking about flips and guys who change at the last minute, we hear from all these coaches who tell us that recruiting is all about relationships, building relationships, getting to know these kids, getting to know the important people in their lives, the parents, the teachers, the coaches, all these people, whoever helps these kids make important decisions, these coaches are trying to get to know. We hear that all the time. Ed Orgeron used to say that. Now he's hired at LSU yesterday. The vibe coming out of that press conference was about this recruiting dream team being assembled at LSU now with Les Miles and Kevin Steele as defensive coordinator and Ed Orgeron. JD, how significant is it to have Ed Orgeron out there right now trying to flip people to an SEC West rival?
Well, and Frank Wilson, he commented on Frank Wilson in the two-hour recruiting thing. He said he's never been around a better meeting, and gave a ton of credit to Wilson. He's also heavily involved in that kind of dream team aspect. I think it's huge, and I don't want to give it too much credence in the sense of one man and one school type mentality, but I do think it's significant. And I think because of the way he works and the amount of national exposure or national clout, respect that he's got, heck, go back to Tiga. Tiga didn't know who Nick Saban was, but when his coach said Coach Orgeron was coming to see you, he said, oh, he's the one from The Blind Side, right? And so, like it or not, Ed Orgeron he's got staying power to a degree. He's got the ability to go into a living room and control the situation. He says he's a great listener and that he listens and takes care of the situation. I saw that in a quote in Ron Higgins' story about it. But I think at the end of the day, my take going back to when he was here, he always appealed to people that were looking to have their son taken care of by a guy that was a not role model, but a figure that they could trust or they knew he would take care of business. And I think he's got that element. When he walks into a house, he has the ability to command. That's the key word. He has the ability to command. And he doesn't have as much time as you would like, but he's the kind of guy that can make up some of that time and be a big impact these last 3 weeks.
Well, what does take care of business mean, JD? They trust him in that regard. Is that the same as molding character and helping young men along in life? I mean, what do you mean they trust him to take care of business?
That's his quote as far as that.
What it makes me think, and what I've always thought is they look at Ed Orgeron as somebody who has a good chance to get their son to the NFL. I mean, he has those ties.
I think the biggest impact he makes, and he's going to make an impact in general, but when it comes to defensive line recruits, again, he's starting off with a defensive line recruit this morning. I don't think there's any doubt. When you go, I was around Warren Sapp and Cortez Kennedy and all the great defensive tackles at Miami or at Ole Miss, and hey, Greg Hardy, I brought in Greg Hardy. Look, they go, I want to be that guy. I want to make $13 million a year. That's absolutely true.
Brandon, how is Ed Orgeron received just on the recruiting trail in Mississippi? I mean, do people look at him do they still see the loud Cajun? Do they respect him as the former Ole Miss head coach? Do they feel like he didn't accomplish enough as the Ole Miss coach? I mean, how do you think he's received in Mississippi? Brandon Speck has left the building.
Did we lose him?
We may have lost Brandon Speck. We know Brandon was having some technical difficulties. Still see his picture there, but we don't hear Brandon. JD, why don't you take that one, man? How do you think he's received in Mississippi?
Because he hasn't been here recently, I don't know as far as at this particular juncture, but I do think because of what he did at USC, I think that helps him. I think Ole Miss fans look at him a lot differently than somebody else would. I think at the end of the day, he realizes that while he's a different coach, he just may not be a head coach, and I think we all kind of realize that too. I don't think that there's a lot of people that think he's a joke per se. I really think that there's a certain level of respect there. I think that they realize that he does have a lot of things to offer. And again, I think because he works so hard, you have to respect that alone, that one aspect alone. But you know, I think he's going to be looked at differently in this state, particular compared to any other state. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Just because.
Right. Right. You know, I really thought that with what he accomplished as interim head coach at USC, going 6-2, won more conference games in that season as interim coach in the Pac-12 than he won conference games in 3 years at Ole Miss. Brandon, the question was, don't know if you heard it, but how do you feel like Ed Orgeron is received in Mississippi among high school coaches and prospects? Do they still see him as a loud Cajun, you know, that's kind of that persona? Do they see him as an Ole Miss coach that didn't accomplish enough? Do they see him as a USC coach, the interim, that gained a national profile? How do you think Mississippi people receive Ed Orgeron?
Yeah, can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Go ahead.
Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we got you right now.
Yeah, I think JD hit it. I was going to say the same thing. I think the national pub that he got from USC is big time. I mean, the loud Cajun thing, I think, is part of the appeal, right? I mean, he's
Well, we have lost Brandon again. We'll catch up with Brandon next week, and we'll get his thoughts on Ed Orgeron. Just a few minutes left, man. I wanted to throw a couple of Ole Miss prospect names out to you. One of them being Kendrick Norton down in Florida, a defensive tackle, a need position for Ole Miss. You know, who else is looking at Norton? What are Ole Miss's chances here?
Well, I still don't know quite on the Ole Miss chances. Obviously, they will increase next week when he comes on an official visit. That's when he's scheduled to be here. I think that's when Ole Miss will really know where they stand with him, and he kind of knows where he stands with Ole Miss. He's going to Miami this weekend and talked with Larry Bluestein of the Miami Herald, who's their long-time recruiting editor down there. Very big on Norton. And this is a guy that could play both sides of the ball. He could be an offensive guard. Thinks he's better at defensive tackle. He said he's a legitimate 310 pounds and not a big fat guy. He says he's very athletic and, you know, thinks a lot of Norton. And good student. Is from the Jacksonville area, played at Trinity Christian. And I believe they won a state championship. I know he was first-team All-State as an offensive guard. So very good prospect. Bluestein kind of made me believe that Norton's starting to realize that, hey, he can play with some of these big guys. He's almost starting to step up and realize, you know, I might be as good as some of these other guys. He was an Under Armour guy and was impressive in some of these other All-Stars games that the state of Florida has. So at the end of the day, you know, with him going to Miami this weekend, that probably gives Miami a bump. Hopefully he comes with a big weekend at Ole Miss and he finishes strong, or they finish strong with him. And then I think we'll know a lot more where he really stands. I know he was down to 4 schools. So, you know, anytime you can get him on campus, and obviously there's a need there, defensive tackle, if you can get him to be coupled up with DJ Jones, you just made yourself better as a team, I think.
Absolutely, and like we said, the Rebels, you know, have room for some people to come in and play right there. One more question, man, and we'll wrap it up for today. Ole Miss recently promoted Corey Batoon from an administrative role where he was doing a lot of recruiting in-house. Now he's back on the field coaching safeties and coordinating special teams. I spoke to him yesterday. On Wednesday, he was on the road to Memphis, getting ready to fly out and visit with some prospects and coaches. You got a guy like this coming in, has some recruiting in his background, but he's been away from it in terms of getting out of the office and building relationships. Been away from it for 3 years. Where do you plug him in on this staff, JD? Is it the easiest fit just to put him in the area that Tom Allen had been recruiting, or do you shake up those responsibilities a little bit? As of yet, Corey Batoon has not been assigned an area, but they'll get started on class of 16 pretty soon.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. A lot of the coaches have areas, sure, that are assigned, but they also have strengths and weaknesses. They're assigned those because they have a relationship, or they're from that area, or they have ties to that area. So in that case, you've got to look at it. It's a balancing act. You've got to look at it that way as well. I think this, and again, I say this because we kind of know, but we don't know all the details yet. I would think that he finishes up where they want him to finish up, in the sense of he gets involved with as many kids as he can, or feels like where he's supposed to help, and then moving forward, then he has a more defined role. I absolutely agree that the 2016 class, area-wise, moving forward, prospect-wise, I think that's when he's really going to start to have that more defined role. Obviously, you need him out in the field now recruiting, and I think he'll do a good job. I think because he's had the background with recruiting, but he's been assistant coach before. I actually think it's a good fresh perspective from an Ole Miss standpoint. I think he can come into a house and give you a great first impression, because he is new. And what do they always say? Great first impression. He strikes me as a guy that would be able to do that, and as a result, it may be a bump in recruiting with places that he is assigned to, or starts to go see kids at these different schools these next couple weeks.
First impressions carry a lot of weight. Good stuff, JD. We enjoyed having Brandon for most of the program. We'll see if we can catch him from start to finish next week. That's it, folks, for this week. Y'all come back and join us for the lunchtime recruiting chat next Thursday.